We're learning more and more every week about ESO's upcoming new class for 2023, the Arcanist. In this video, we'll do a deep dive into everything we know about the class so far, including some powerful new abilities that were recently revealed, like this Templar style beam skill that looks pretty insane. So let's jump right into it. Now first, let's cover the basics. The Arcanist is ESO's 7th class, the 3rd new class after release, and it's set to debut on June 5th for PC and June 20th for consoles as part of ESO's new Necrom chapter. So yes, you will need to purchase Necrom in order to play as an Arcanist, and this is a separate purchase from ESO Plus if you're already a subscriber, so keep that in mind. In terms of theme and visuals, the Arcanist class is definitely ESO's most ambitious class to date, with deep ties to the lore of Daedric Prince Hermaues Mora and the plane of Apocrypha. We'll get to travel to Apocrypha ourselves during the upcoming Necrom chapter, and I expect we'll get a lot more details from now until then about just what makes the Arcanist unique and how they are compared to ESO's other 6 classes. But stylistically, you'll see a lot of vibrant green visuals that represent the class, often in the forms of these ancient runes. These runes will float around your character, display on the ground, or even attack enemies directly as part of the Arcanist's skill set. Spellbooks also seem to be a huge component of the class's visual style, as player characters will often have spellbooks in hand as part of a skill's animation, as we've already seen with quite a few of the skills which were revealed so far. The Tomes of Knowledge and the Black Books of Hermaues Mora seem to be a huge inspiration for the class and most likely a source of power for the skills that we'll be able to unlock as part of the class skill lines. Now, according to creative director Rich Lambert, this class is something that's very different than anything they've built before. It's tightly integrated into the overarching story of the chapter. And so yeah, a lot of the inspiration definitely centers around Hermaues Mora, but also the thirst for forbidden knowledge, the knowledge of the arcane. Rich also said the theme of the Arcanist is darker and has a more cosmic horror vibe, which we've seen throughout the trailers for Necrom, and I think we'll also discover as we dive deeper into the skills in just a minute. Rich also mentioned the Arcanist has several unique audio cues that have not been heard before in ESO, so I'm definitely looking forward to exploring this class. Now, in other interviews, Rich also spoke about the technical challenges of bringing the 7th new class to ESO, which I think is also pretty interesting. I mean, basically, the Arcanist actually took something like probably 2 to 3 years to create. So it's something that they've wanted to do for a while, but technical issues and game resources being a big hurdle in the meantime, something that they had to overcome at first. And I believe it took something like about a year for ESO engineers just to create enough memory in the game files itself to make room for the Arcanist's unique look and skills. And speaking of skills, the design team has stressed that the Arcanist will be easy to pick up for new players, but also have depth for veteran players. And it's going to fit well into all the basic roles present in ESO, including tanks, healers, and DPS builds. And lead combat designer Brian Wheeler described the Arcanist as the most versatile class yet, able to fit into any playstyle. So in terms of the Arcanist skills, this is where things start to get really interesting, and we'll use the rest of this video to dive deeper into all the skills and the skill lines that we've learned about so far. There are definitely some new ideas here that we've never seen before, and some other skills which look familiar but expand on existing skills and ideas from other classes. First, the 3 main skill lines of the Arcanist are set up exactly how the Warden and the Necromancer class skill lines were created in the past, with one dedicated skill line for each playstyle focus, that being tanking, DPS, and healing respectively. We already know the names of these skill lines as well, and their connection to Apocrypha and Hermaues Mora really shines through here. For example, we know that Herald of the Tome is the DPS focused skill line, Apocryphal Soldier is the tank focused skill line, and Curative Runeforms will be focused on healing and buffs. But that's not all. In addition to their unique skill lines, the Arcanist class will also gain access to a unique combat mechanic, which has been described as a point-based combo system. The term for this in-game is called Crux, and these are basically runes of energy that your character can build up by casting specific class skills, and then spend for bonus effects by casting other class skills. We'll talk more about this in just a minute. But that said, I do want to cover every single confirmed skill so far, starting with the newest skill that we learned about more recently called Fate Carver. This skill was debuted in an exclusive trailer with IGN, and it looks really cool if I do say so myself. Described by Brian Wheeler as a big laser that you channel in front of you that damages enemy targets within the path. This basically looks like the Templar's Radiant Oppression skill on steroids. And I do love a good beam skill personally, but the interesting thing here is that the beam itself seems to be aimed by the player that casts it, instead of directed towards a specific target like a typical, single target skill in ESO would be. In the short gameplay trailer that ZeniMax provided, we can see that the player is directing the beam itself, as whoever is playing aims a bit too high at first and hits nothing, but then quickly adjusts their aim to bring it down in line with the enemy. So personally, I love this idea and this extension on this beam type of skill. It's pretty unique in my opinion. Obviously, the close comparison you could think of would be Templar's Radiant Oppression, which I mentioned earlier, but with the additional targeting freedom of something like a Warden Deep Fissure skill, I think this one is going to have some amazing potential for damage dealing combos, both in PvE and PvP, and I can't wait to try this one out for myself. And speaking of beams, there is yet another beam skill that I've read about. This comes from another interview, in fact, but instead of damage, the focus on this one is healing. Now, it is unclear if this is maybe just a morph option for Fate Carver or a completely different skill, but to me it does sound like a different skill, one that we will probably find in the Curative Runes skill line. Of course, keep in mind that everything we know so far is still months away from release and could potentially change, but regardless, the name of this skill is Remedy Cascade. It is a healing beam that can also be aimed, so similar to Rune Carver, but it's healing focused obviously, and players can spend Crux on this skill to add bonus magicka and stamina recovery to anyone standing within the beam. So right there you have another example of how Crux will work in upping the power or utility of the Arcanist skill, which is a bit similar in my opinion to how Necromancers utilize corpses to empower some of their class abilities, but with a slightly different twist. Again, some skills build up your Crux, while other skills spend whatever Crux you have saved up. And apparently Remedy Cascade is going to be a spender ability. Next up we have Runespite Ward, which is a defensive damage skill, which we know belongs to the Apocryphal Soldier skill line, as this was revealed on the main ESO website. And then what's interesting is there also seems to be a damage shield skill in the Curative Runeforms skill line as well, though we don't know the name of that one yet. However, the difference is that Runespite Ward deals damage. We also know this can be improved by using Crux. So this sounds a bit to me like Templar's Blazing Shield skill, which damages enemies when the shield expires, but we'll have to wait and see more specifics to know exactly for sure how the Arcanist's multiple shield skills are unique from each other. Also shown off during the Arcanist reveal was the damage skill Abyssal Impact, which has a truly unique visual style. This skill infuses your arms with an unstable magic, transforming it into a tentacle that thrusts forward, damaging enemies in front of you. To me, this reminds me of something like the Necromancer skill Ruinous Scythe or Hungry Scythe, which is actually in the Necro Tank skill tree. So we'll see if this also holds true for the Arcanist. Another skill with a bit more controversy is the Apocryphal Gate skill, which opens a pair of temporary portals between your location and wherever you're aiming that you can jump between for extra mobility during combat or even for greater exploration outside of combat. When reviewing the trailer footage, it does seem like there is some vertical component to the portals as well, which is where I think this would be really interesting to use in combat and even just for exploration. For example, could this be used to jump up a keep wall in Cyrodiil, or could you use this to access maybe areas outside of a normal ESO map? Digging a bit deeper into the skill on the ESO website, I was able to find that the portals are not just for yourself as the Arcanist, but that apparently other players, or at least your group members, can also use your portals too. Now this is a support skill after all, as it does belong to the Curative Runeforms skill line, so there's a lot of really interesting potential use cases for this skill that I cannot wait to explore. If you guys have any ideas on how to use this and abuse this skill, make sure to let us know down in the comments section too. Now finally, in Herald of the Tome, we do know one more confirmed We do know one more confirmed damage skill from the skill line, which is called Runeblades. This appears to be a basic DPS skill which can be performed at range, so this would compare well to other skills like Necromancer Skulls or the Warden Cliff Racer. We do also know that the Runeblades is a Crux builder, so each time you hit a target, it seems to increase the count of Crux surrounding you by 1. So likely this skill will play a big part in a DPS Arcanist rotation, letting you build up that Crux quickly to empower your other abilities in rotation to do even more damage or provide other bonus effects. So those are the confirmed skills so far that we know of, but we do have hints of a few other skill types that will be part of the Arcanist toolkit. This comes directly from the ESO website, which I've included in my Arcanist guide at hacktheminotaur.com. Make sure you check that out. There's actually a few extra skills described in the Apocryphal Soldier section, which I find very interesting. The first one especially is a skill that, quote, allows you to dominate your foe's attention. This is surely some type of taunt skill, but that actually has a lot more possibilities than you might think. For example, in ESO's Update 37 coming up, there is a clear definition of soft taunt skills that they've been working on, which includes any skill that pulls an enemy towards the caster. So in the case of the Arcanist, this could simply mean that the class has a basic pull ability. Of course, it could also mean that the Arcanist class has a direct taunt skill, something like Pierce Armor, but I sort of doubt that because that would make them much more flexible tanks compared to any other class in the game, which there's no other skill like that. Could the Arcanist maybe even have an AoE taunt skill, which players have been asking for in ESO for a long time? Even if it was only a soft taunt, that would definitely be really interesting, but again, we'll have to wait and see more details on what this actually means. The ESO website also describes a buff to your party or your own defense capabilities, which sounds to me very similar to the Warden's armor buff, which has a self-buff morph and a group buff morph. Now I think if the Arcanist got that sort of similar type of skill, that might be a little bit redundant, a little bit boring. So hopefully it is something a bit more interesting, maybe a self and a group version of major or minor evasion. Let me know what you guys think that means in the comments. Now that said, I'm also expecting some type of unique buff or debuff that really pushes the Arcanist over the top and makes them highly desirable for groups, similar to how the Necromancer received major vulnerability. Only time will tell, obviously, but let me know what you think about these skills down in the comment section below. Do you like how the Arcanist toolkit looks so far? And what other type of abilities do you think needs to be added? Also, make sure to check out our Arcanist class guide at hacktheminotaur.com. It's fully updated, where I have screenshots and descriptions of every skill we mentioned in this video, and where we'll be adding all the updated information as soon as we can get it. I'll have a link for that down in the description, and as always, I hope you're doing well, stay safe out there, and I will see you around in the next video.